And I think too, it's one of those things where atheists kind of, or at least critics who are being uncharitable or who are kind of parroting what they've heard. Even Bart Ehrman comes about with this theory of like, I need 3 signatured copies of the Gospel of Mark, and then I would take it as confidence that Mark wrote it. But at the same time, if let's say that all 4 gospel writers wrote exactly the same thing, well, you would just make that decision that, well, whoever the author was just wrote his name different 4 different times. And so what they're suggesting is, everything has to be said exactly the same. But you would say, well, there's collusion here, there's a conspiracy, or there's just a single author who just wrote different names on a sheet of paper.
Yeah, I actually think that regardless of how this would have turned out, and I know this is the case, right? I mean, we do cases, and regardless of how we put them together, there'll be a defense attorney who will develop a theory about how to defeat our case. This is just what happens. You don't get to a case and you go, now I've got this one. I've learned from my other cases better. So now I know when I go to trial, that defense attorney is just going to say, hey, you know what? We have nothing to say. No, the defense attorney is going to spend months developing a robust theory to defeat ours. That's what defense attorneys do. God bless them. And I think that there's a need to be properly. I'm not an anti-defense attorney guy. I talk about this in the book, that there are 3 different kinds of defense attorneys: people who truly believe their client is innocent, people who truly believe that even if their client isn't innocent, that the system works best and requires all of us to do our best in defending people. That's probably the lion's share, by the way, of defense attorneys. And then the third is people who just love money, and they'll take any client and do anything if the money is big enough. That's a very small percentage in my view. The biggest percentage of people who think that even though my client is guilty, I have a robust duty to defend him to the best of my ability. And so that means that when I walk in, I don't care how strong my case is on the prosecution side, there will be if you've got the right attorney who's got a skill set. And by the way, if my case was slightly different, he would adjust. If my case was entirely different, he would adjust to that. And so I think that this is true also of any kind of skeptic who is pushing back against a claim. That regardless of what our claims would have been, regardless of whatever you imagine, if I had documents that were like X, there'd be no complaining. Oh no, there would be. There would be a robust defense offered against that version of the Gospels. So I'm kind of like, okay, well, that's just the way this works. I think in the end that there is a robust laboratory of epistemology. How do you know what we know? How do you defend what we know? How do you communicate what is true? That occurs every day in courtrooms across America. And this doesn't happen. I mean, you might write a paper and have your other equals, literary critics, maybe peer review the paper. But what happens in criminal trials is you have a theory about a claim, and you present the theory about the claim, and you get to test, number 1, how do I know a theory is true? How do I know the claim is true? 2, how do I even communicate it well to a jury? What works, what doesn't work in communicating the claim? This is a laboratory for discovering truth and communicating truth to others that very few other disciplines get to experience repeatedly. That's why I've always felt like, this is why so many books about Christianity, defending the Christian worldview, have been written with titles like that involve some form of evidence, courtroom, or trial, right? Yet they're not written by anybody who spent any time in a criminal trial. So it turns out they're right, that this is the best analogy. This is the best place, I think, to learn how to discover truth and communicate it to others. But unless you've been doing that for your career, you're kind of on the outside wondering what it looks like inside that room. Yeah. So all I wanted to do in Cold Case was to show you what it looks like inside the room.